Hi folks, welcome back. Thank you for watching. Please do hit subscribe if you haven't done so yet. It really does help when you do that. So today folks, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the world of Fane speakers. Now, if you're a regular to this channel, you'll know that I'm a big fan of Fane. I love their existing lineup, and I love them as a company as well, a historic British brand, still hand making their speakers one at a time here in the UK. So I love their ethos and I love their speakers. Now, Fane have recently released not one, not two, but three brand new speakers onto the market. The F25, the F30, and the A30. So some lower wattage speakers considering their existing lineup, but I've been really curious to find out how these fit into the existing Ascension range. So what I'm going to do today is film a shootout of the entire Fane Ascension range of speakers. Now I say entire, I am actually missing the A90, the high-powered Alnico, but the rest of them are all present and correct here, and hopefully 7 out of 8 isn't too bad for a shootout. Now, I've been thinking long and hard about how best to do this, and I was going to throw a variety of different amplifiers and some effects pedals at them to see how they all got on. But today's actually my last day of having the Hylight Custom 50 amp here on demo. And if you know anything about Fane speakers historically, they've been used in a lot of different amplifiers over the years, but they're most closely tied with Hiwatt. They are very, very synonymous with those old DR103, DR504 sounds of the early 70s. So it would seem a bit daft to have the Hylight Custom 50 here, which is basically a top-of-the-range replica of the old DR504 head, and all these Fane speakers and not put them together. So I'm going to use that amplifier today. I'm going to do some clean playing, some lowish gain crunch playing, and at the end just turn the amp up pretty much all the way so it's starting to fold in on itself and become really harmonically rich, because I think that'll be quite revealing for the low end response of these speakers. So I'm going to put them each in pairs into my Zilla Fatboy 2x12. The cabinet itself is not going to move. I'm going to mic both speakers with identical microphones in identical positions into a 2-channel mic preamp that's set exactly the same on both sides. So complete consistency all round, aside from swapping the speakers. And I'm not going to normalise the levels either, so any sensitivity differences between the speakers should come through. Now, of course, we are going to have to bear in mind that these speakers have pretty different power ratings. The F25 is a 25 watt speaker, so in a 2x12 with a 50 watt head, that's going to be pushed right to the upper limit of what it's designed to do. The F90, being given 25 watts, is barely ticking over. So bear that in mind when you're listening to the audio today. But I'm especially looking forward to finding out how the new A30 speaker, the Alnico, compares to the old A60, because the A60 is probably in my top 2 speakers I've ever played. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how the A30 kind of matches up with that speaker. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. So without further ado, folks, here we go. we are, folks. Now, please do comment underneath. Let me know what you were hearing today. Which of those speakers was your favourite and why? I love chatting nerdy guitar stuff with you folks down in the comments section. But some really interesting results, right? And I don't think there's a single duff speaker in the entire range. They all sound fantastic in different ways for different styles of playing and different personal preferences. So I think it just comes down to what you're wanting to use the speaker for. But there's definitely a speaker for everyone in that range. Now, at the start of the video with the amp set clean and the master kind of at 12 o'clock, especially on the neck pickup of the guitar, I think they all sounded pretty similar to each other. There was very little to differentiate one from the next. On the bridge pickup, a few differences did start to poke through slightly, but as we turned the amp up and we started to shift some serious SPL and push the speakers much harder, and the amp was breaking up so the overall sound was much more harmonically complex, we could hear a lot more differences coming through loud and clear, couldn't we? Now, to my ears, and having just very quickly flicked through the audio I recorded today, the two Alnico speakers, the A30 and the A60, they definitely had that sort of classic, slightly more relaxed attack to them compared to the ceramics. Because sitting here in front of a 2x12 with that 50-watt Hylight amp cranked up to the point it wanted to rip my head off, with the ceramic speakers in the cab, it was like being punched in the back of the head. With the Alnicos, it was like being pushed on the back. So it was still very forceful, but just a little bit less brutal than the ceramics. And the two Alnicos seem to have probably the flattest mid-range out of all of them. If anything, they sounded a little bit mid-scooped compared to the other speakers. But they had that really lovely, warm yet detailed, clanky classic sound that we associate with Alnico magnets. Now, the four ceramic speakers, they all definitely had a lot more poke in the mid-range compared to the Alnicos, but the frequencies they were pushing were all very different from each other. So I think the new F30 had a slightly more sort of boxy lower mid-range thing going on. The F25 had a slightly more classic mid-range. The F90 is a very different speaker in that it's definitely more voiced for modern music, so it's super tight in the low end and has that real kind of fizz in the upper mid-range for sort of modern metal playing. And the neodymium speaker, the N30, really surprised me today, because I think out of all of them it probably sounded the most balanced throughout the entire frequency range. Neo speakers tend to get a bit of a bad reputation compared to Alnicos and ceramics, but that N30 can absolutely punch up there with the rest of them. Now, as I said in the intro, I didn't adjust the levels whatsoever today, so any differences in sensitivity rating would have come through. And I think overall they were all sounding pretty equal in volume. But to my ears, listening to the audio, the F25 did sound a touch quieter. And I've just checked on the Fane website. All of the speakers have a sensitivity rating of 100 dB, but the F25 has a rating of 98 dB. So it's a tiny bit quieter compared to the others. So I'm glad I wasn't just hearing things. And that can be useful if you're trying to tame a particularly raucous amp and bring the overall output level down slightly for a similar level of breakup overall. Now, for my sort of personal favourite speaker, as I said in the intro, I'm a long-time fan of the A60. It's one of my favourite speakers. But the A30 really surprised me today because it definitely seemed to have slightly more kind of snap and crunch in the upper mid-range. And I think the three new drivers, the A30, the F30 and the F25, do seem to be a little bit more mid-forward than the existing drivers, just as a slight observation, whether that's because they are lower wattage, so they're getting pushed harder and they're breaking up sooner, or just how they're voiced and the type of cone they use. I'm not sure what it's down to, but they did seem to be a little bit more mid-pushed than the others. But at a couple of points in the audio edit, I am going to put in the A30 and the A60 together and bring the levels down so they're equivalent to each of the speakers on their own, because that pairing was really doing it for me today. I had both those speakers in the cab at the same time, and that extra snappy upper mid-range of the A30 and the kind of thick lower mid-range of the A60, they just slotted together and sounded absolutely glorious. So I am going to include that pairing in the edit just so you can hear what I'm talking about. But as I said, there's not a single bad one of the bunch. They're all brilliant, just very much suited to different wattage amplifiers, different styles of music, different personal preferences and types of playing. So those are just my very early preliminary thoughts, having quickly flicked through the audio. Please do let me know what you were hearing and give me your thoughts and opinions, because I love getting feedback from you folks on all this sort of stuff. So thank you for watching, folks. I hope this video was interesting and useful for you. Please do carry on subscribing. I know I always say it, but it makes a huge difference when you hit subscribe. And I will see you very soon. Bye-bye.